My name's Qwist, and for the past 6 months I've been teaching here at the University of Denver as a visiting artist. I'm originally from Colorado, so this is a special opportunity for me to come home after being away for a long period of time and make some work about what that was like to kind of have a homecoming of sorts. Growing up, being an artist was modeled to me as a pretty realistic career. My grandpa was a painter and sculptor, an educator in the Denver area for 40 years. And my dad is also an artist and runs a bronze foundry here in Fort Collins, Colorado. I think that's part of why I wanted to get into education. I wanted to share with students the gift that I think I received. And model to them that being an artist is a realistic career and an important one in our culture. Whenever I start a body of work, I never really know kind of where I'm going, so it's always a little bit stressful. But I think that some of that like anxiety is kind of what drives me, like try to find an answer. I really like to let the work kind of build on itself. I'm not really an artist who sketches much. I really like to create something and then let pieces kind of build off of that. And I find for me that's how I make the most authentic work that I can. I think in that sense, clay is the perfect medium for me because it's so simple and elemental, and it really always starts out the same. It's just earth. The first piece I made that I felt I was starting to get some traction on this body of work was piece called Birth. I had this thought, I had built this big sort of womb form as thinking about, home and beginning and starting points. And I wasn't quite sure what to do with it. It felt like a big pot that wasn't really in line with what I wanted to make. And I had this thought to kind of almost reenact my birth in a way. When I'm making things, I really like to try to make myself uncomfortable. I think that has a way of really revealing some kind of inner truths. I'll get a thought and I try to just act on it as quickly as I can. I'm really good at talking myself out of things. There's just a constant sort of battle in my head about whether an idea is good or bad. And I gave myself sort of a parameter, and that was to do it on my birthday. So I knew I just only had this one day to get it done. And that really kind of helped me to do what was sort of a strange thing to do. Of course, even some of the ideas that I act on aren't worthwhile in the end, and that's another reason I like clay, is that I can slake that clay down, dry it out, wedge it up, turn it into something else. And I like, in the end, once I've created a body of work, that all those ideas are kind of mixed up in all those pieces, and some of that energy is still in there, which is kind of an exciting little thing for me to think about. My older brother and sister are actually half siblings, although it never felt that way. One afternoon I met my mom for a coffee, not far from DU, and she was, it just so happened to be on near where she used to live, and actually where she had met my older brother and sister's biological father, which was at a Conoco station that he worked at. And thinking about kind of family and life and home and these things that sort of enrich us, fill us up. Filling Station, which is the title of the show, just sort of came out of that experience. It was becoming clearer to me that this is a much more kind of complicated content than I had maybe originally thought. I wanted there to be a pretty digestible, easy structure. So I started thinking of highlighting birth, life, and death in these 3 different rooms. So I don't only use clay, I like using found objects as well. Sometimes in their true form, sometimes molded and transformed into clay. I like bringing into context things that have a different material history than the clay. One found object that I used in the show was a baseball glove that I molded and cast into clay. That relates to my birth story that my parents have told me probably a million times throughout my life about how quickly I came into the world, and so fast that the doctor needed a baseball mitt to catch me. In making this piece, I was playing with the 2 halves and the way that I molded it, and having trouble fitting them together, and then actually kind of learning that splaying them apart seemed a little more interesting, and it actually reminded me, like looked like butterfly wings on the backside. So I decided to kind of play into this idea about how gender is kind of marked on us at birth, and the cultural idea of gender is placed on us at such a young age. In thinking about the life section of the exhibition, my mind immediately went to sex, which is kind of funny, but it's also pretty telling, I think, about the complications that went along with like my sexual awakening, and that I think of a lot of boys in our society. You know, learning about sex through pornography for me was a really damaging thing, and led to also some pretty damaging behavior all through growing up. This blue mask form was a way for me to think about my new understanding of my identity, and that this learning of toxic masculinity was something that I could actually take off and live in a space that felt more true to me. The pandemic hit about halfway through my time at DU, which was obviously hard for everyone. And coming home, I was so excited to spend time with relatives, and especially my grandmas who were nearing the end of their life. And I all of a sudden couldn't do that anymore, which was really, really sad. My grandma ended up passing away during this time, not from COVID, but all the same restrictions kind of went around her death, and that we couldn't gather to mourn that, and so that was a really strange thing, and really kind of made me understand how important these rituals we have are around death. And, I don't think any of us in our family have really felt any closure on that yet, because we haven't been able to celebrate her life in a real concrete way. I like putting together both super recognizable found objects from our world with more constructed, abstract ceramic pieces. I like the dissonance that happens when those things get right up next to each other. So two of the recognizable objects in this space were a fish tank and a bunk beds. Not sure how you say that. These were kind of clear indicators of my childhood and things that I remember. And this came up in the experience of, after my grandma passing, some of us had gotten together because we needed to clear out her apartment, and thinking about the things that were really, really important to her, some of which were really nice, and things she wanted Kara and I to have, and some things that she wanted my sister to have, and some things that we were like, well, what are we going to do with this? And just these markers of memory and of life and of home. Until coming back home, I think I always just imagined my home as this space where I am right now. I'm in my childhood home. But being here and making work about this, it's become clear to me really how complicated the concept of home is. I think it's the space, it's a place, it's a feeling. And I think one of the reasons home seemed so simple to me for so long was that, as a white man in a white family in Colorado, it really was. And our system was set up to make that easy for my family. And through my work, I really hope to continue revealing my privileges and my ignorances, and I want what I do in the studio to really change the way that I move through the world. I think home is a concept that'll challenge me for my whole life. Even after making this show, I feel like I've only kind of scraped the surface in a lot of ways. My dad's a beekeeper, and it's fun to think, even though me and my siblings have all moved away, live in different states, that my dad has all these hundreds of thousands of children that keep him company. And I wish, in some ways, home was as simple as it is for bees. They all have their distinct role, and they'll never deviate from that plan, and that's comforting in a lot of ways. That's not the reality that my wife Kara and I live. We've been nomadic for a while, and I imagine we might be for the foreseeable future. But I think we have a lot of work to do on figuring out, you know, what home is for us and for our new family that we're forming together. Being a bad boy, being a nasty guy was
It's like gonna turn into a porno.